Hello, welcome back to Ride Rescue. Well, in this episode, I want to finally start cutting all of this side of the truck off. Now that I've got the roof where I want it, I'm really excited I was able to salvage that roof panel. I was worried I was going to have to cut it off and replace it. But I do have to break open the seam there at the roof panel, so I wanted to make sure that roof panel was savable first before I start cutting into all this, because if I didn't have to worry about the roof skin, I would just start ripping into it. But now that I know that roof panel is savable and I was able to get it really smooth, now I need to use a little more finesse in separating that seam to get this off, because the roof panel, then this seam, and then the inner piece. In order for me to get that out, I've got to do some finesse. I'm saving the roof and I'm not removing the windshield that changes the whole plan of the side of this truck. And I'll explain. So, the obvious, to get all of this taken apart, just drill out all of these spot welds. In order to do that, I need to cut it right here. I'll remove all of this before I start really getting into cutting the piece that I purchased. If I was to replace all of this, if I would have had to pull the glass because I had to replace the roof, then I would have gone all the way down and taken this skin off, so, because it's on top of this skin, and I would have removed all of it. All the way down to the rocker panels, all the way down to that bottom seam. I really don't want to disturb that bottom seam. From what I can tell, this whole side piece is galvanized. And so if the side skin is galvanized and this rocker panel is all spot welded and sealed up, it runs a really high risk of this seam rusting out 10 years down the road, especially the way I plan on using this truck. So I just do not want to open that up. Yeah, if it gets to that, if I pop that whole seam along there and drill out all those spot welds, I can get in through, there's some little vent holes, I can get in with some wax. There's wax sealants that you can spray inside, and that'll probably do a good job of keeping out the rust from this area, but it's nowhere near as good as this original factory seam and galvanizing. So you can see I've been marking on it. I've been trying to decide where I'm going to cut and weld. I want to get as close to this rocker panel as possible because of the damage that is up above. This area is pushed in and the inner sheet metal is pushed in. So I need to get as low as I can so that I can know that this area has not moved. This area has. So when I weld here and I replace all of this all the way down to here, that factory stamped piece that I install right here will have the correct shape for this center pillar. So then I can guarantee to get this exactly where it needs to be, and I can guarantee that from this hinge to this hinge and to that strike plate, that the doors are going to be exactly where they should be from the factory, so that all of this goes back to being brand new again, or close to it. So everything fits perfect, all my gaps will be perfect, and I can save that original rocker. For me to cut all the way down to the rocker, which was my original thought to do, there's ribs in this. There's so much detail in this rocker that if I brought it around to this seam, this would really be a bear for me to body work. So worst case scenario, you can see my marks. I've cut all the way down here. But I'm going to start right here. As you can see from my X right there, there's a dent there. This hinge was pushed in, just a little bit. So that's why I'm thinking I might have to go all the way down to this panel here. And by doing it just inside of this door lip, then I will be able to bodywork this, and this will stay perfectly straight. So you won't be able to tell there's been any bodywork done. So back to this panel. There's some dents right here, and this was pushed in, but I am very confident that I've gotten this pulled out where it needs to be. I do not want to cut this open. Mainly, my biggest reason for not cutting this open is fire damage. When I start having to weld all this back together, there is such a high risk of catching a dash on fire. I've been around a lot of body shops, and the horror stories, just about every professional body man I know has welded on areas like this and have caught a vehicle on fire. Whether it just be some insulation, whether it be wiring. So to do it right, and to guarantee that all of these pieces are replaced correctly, you really need to pull that dash out, and the windshield out, and that front cowl area. So I want to avoid that, and I feel pretty comfortable, like I say, that I've gotten this where it needs to be. And I'll just do some dent repair right there, get out my little stud puller, and pull that dent, smooth it as much as possible. So I'm going to start by cutting it at that hinge, and then I can see how everything lines up. But like I say, most likely I'll be cutting down below just because that hinge is pushed in just a hair. This end, there's wrinkles here and there's wrinkles here, which was kind of weird because of the way this was hit. But after I expose this area and look down inside, there is a body panel that is reinforcing in this area, and it is all glued to this outer skin. So that is pushing up against the inner piece. So as this pushed in, it bent around that inner panel. So I want to get down below that inner panel. Plus, this is going to be a fairly easy area to cut and bodywork at this vent and be able to get in and get all of these pieces aligned. So this is a really good spot for me to cut. And this panel here is going to be really easy to smooth once I cut and weld and do that bodywork. And then as we get around this edge, there's two seams here. This piece I did not buy. I only bought the outer. And as it goes around right here, this is bent out quite a ways. But it's not kinked or crinkled or rippled or really mangled, so that'll be easy to straighten. So I'm going to pop this joint and then go all the way up back window area, and then we'll split open that seam, and you can see where the roof panel is underneath, or I should say on top of the outer panel. And there's not very many spot welds in that roof, so that roof appears to be glued and welded. So that is not going to be fun to separate. But I will. I'll get it apart. I'm going to most likely have to cut this skin. I'm going to have to split it all along here. Normally I would use a grinding wheel like this one and zip along that edge. It takes a little while, but it gives you a really nice clean cut. But I'm going back to the fire danger. I don't want to catch this thing on fire. So I'm going to go old school. Back to that no fire thing. I do have a fire extinguisher handy. But I'm going to cut it with this. And there's an access hole through the inner panel. Pretty good sized hole where I'll be able to line up these panels. So I had marked this where I wanted to cut it. Furthest forward I absolutely want to go. So I'm going to start back here, and then I'll have plenty of area there to mess with, as well as I'll be able to get into the back side and push with a screwdriver or something to line up those panels if they get a little bit off when I'm welding all this together. And by using this, I'll have a little more control and be able to fill the inside and follow where any possible wires or anything inside of there. There's nothing in there, so there's no chance of me damaging anything while I cut this. Okay, I was wrong. There's an inner skin there. Oh, I'm glad I started with this less finesse before I start tearing things up. Probably have to use my cutting wheel now to finish this area, but at least now I know I'm safe. I'm not going to be throwing sparks all over the inside since there is 2 thicknesses of metal right here. Actually, there's 3 thicknesses of metal right here. So this is a pretty tough area to get into this. We'll probably have to kind of cut it into sections and piece my way into this area so I don't have to cut all the way through that inner skin. There's so many pieces here. I could just saw all the way up through and then weld this back together, but I'm hoping I can avoid that. I'll go around right now and start drilling out these spot welds. I don't want to drill too far, so I want to test a few before I keep going. But that's looking good. Dead battery. Yeah, it's going to take a while. I got a lot of these. Well, that took a while. I drilled all these out. I got all these out, and I decided to go ahead and cut across at the hinge and at the top. Wow. Okay, that explains a lot. That is heavy, heavy gauge steel. And it's got a dent in it right here where the heaviest damage was on this cover. There is a dent there, and that's what's pushing this in. I thought I'd be able to take this outer skin off and then relieve some of the pressure so that I could pull this out. This is heavy, heavy steel. I'm not sure if I'm going to have the tools necessary to move this. I need to move it about 1/8 of an inch in order to get all the doors to line up. I'm pretty sure it's aligned up here at the top. And I know it's aligned at the bottom, so it's just a matter of it's pushed in and it's got to be pulled out. I'm hoping I can heat it up and bring it out. Worst case scenario, I'll have to cut it off and get it on the floor where I can beat on it with a sledgehammer and then weld it back in place. But even with a puller on a frame puller, there's so much strength here. I'm afraid with that open roof, it's just going to pull this whole thing over. I'm going to end up with this coming out, and I'm still going to have this hinge plate in too far. So I would need to brace this and pull this so that I don't distort the roof. Yeah, this is going to be tough. But I'm bound and determined to do it here in my garage. I'm not going to take it to a frame shop and have them do any of my work. Maybe. There's some pretty good wrinkles behind this piece, so I'll have to take this off and then weld it back on. So I'll make some good scribe marks on it so I can get it back where it belongs. But yeah, this area behind is all twisted. So moving right along on getting all of this metal out of the way so I can finish prepping and getting things ready for this outer skin. And there's a little bit of a bow in this back panel that I need to straighten out. It is hidden behind the bed, so I'm not going to worry about body filler and all that kind of stuff. I could probably just smooth that out by hand. But I need to get the seam sealer out of the way. I started by just using a chisel just to make sure I can get that out without having to heat it up or use a grinding wheel or a wire wheel. There's several ways to do it, but using a chisel like this cleans it up really nice. Just that simple. Once I get all that off, then I need to look at what areas around the back window I need to do and how easy that's going to be to get off. It appears that that comes off with the chisel just as easy. Much easier than I thought it would. So I'll get that cleaned up and clean up the area at the roof, and then I'll go back to trying to decide what am I going to do with the rocker panel. Once I get all the seam sealer off, then I'll be able to find these spot welds, and I can drill out the spot welds and take this piece off. Well, I've got everything out of the way, or I should say all the bent stuff out of the way. You see, this is going to be really easy to straighten out. I have to flatten out my spot welds I drilled, and then this is where that latch was. Everything is bent behind it. I mean, it's not bad, and it's easy repair, but it's just bad enough that it threw off the way the door fit. But pretty easy to straighten out. This is still pushed in a little bit, probably 1/4 inch. It's fairly heavy metal, 2 thicknesses, but now that this is all exposed in this area, I'll be able to use a pry bar here and just pull that out. Put a couple of bolts in there, and this is really super strong right here, so prying up against that, I'll be able to easily pull this out. I'm finding now, as I get to this top, this outer skin, not only is it welded to the upper skin, it's also spot welded through to an inner panel, but it's not spot welded through the top roof skin. So there's no way to separate this sandwich. There's 3 sheets there, but only 2 of them are welded with another one on top. This weld here, there's access through here, so the manufacturer spot welded all 3 together. Pretty easy. Drill out all 3, slide the skin out from the sandwich. But there's 2 more that I'll have to drill out either from the inside, which is impossible, or I've got to drill all the way through the top, which is almost impossible to locate it. And then I would have to weld all those back together. So separating these 3, almost impossible without just taking the whole roof skin off. So I went ahead and I started separating here so that I can see how it comes apart. Roof skin, inner skin, and the outer sheet that is sandwiched in between. So there you can see it. This is welded here on all the way through the roof, but it is welded again in several spots along here, and it's hidden. It's not all the way through the roof skin. So luckily I left enough of this flange on the top that I'm going to use panel bond. So I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to clean it up on the inside and across the top, and I'll do the same thing with the outer piece that I'm putting on. I will have to trim this flange off, so I'm going to have to trim it right about here on the new panel, and then I'll use this seam and the top that I have left over as the panel bond adhesive surface. Apparently a lot of manufacturers are using panel bond. I've never used it myself, so this will be a first for me. I am going to go ahead and butt weld this area together, and I'll do the same thing on this end. I will butt weld as much as I can here, and then I'll end up trimming this off, trimming the inner panel, or the outer panel that actually goes inside of here, and then I will do a butt weld to this area, and then this will actually tuck up underneath so that I'll be able to do a seam sealer around the outside. And then once I get my panel bond all along this top piece and the roof piece, then I will do a seam sealer all along the inside of this. And I'm going to have to bend this out slightly so that the thickness of the panel that goes over the top of it doesn't throw things off, as well as just tap this down a little bit. I had to put a lot of thought into how I was going to do this. Panel bond is going to be a real simple solution, and it's a good positive bond and positive solution. Thanks for checking out my channel. I'm here to learn, to teach, and hopefully to inspire. So hit my subscribe button. I really appreciate you subscribing. Leave me a comment. I love hearing from you. If you like what I'm doing, please give me a like. Thanks again for watching.